Hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers making their voices heard. It's primary election day in New York, from incumbents trying to hold on to their seat in Congress to fields of new faces looking to replace those moving on. It's an election that could bring big changes for Democrats in Congress as current elected leaders test their sway over their party. We'll have a clearer look on what's to come this November very soon with our live team coverage from the city's biggest races. Picks on Politics starts right now.
This is Picks on Politics with Dan Manarino.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in for this special live primary election night edition of Picks on Politics. I'm Dan Manarino, and the votes are certainly coming in, and you still have time to cast yours. Polls in New York City are open until 9 p.m., so you have a few more hours left. 172,000 New Yorkers took advantage of early voting, and as of 6 o'clock this evening, a total of 420,000 votes were cast. The latest numbers indicating a bit of a last-minute surge to the polls, and there's still a lot more time to go. Now, there are four big races that we are currently tracking tonight, spanning, of course, all of the 5 boroughs, all the leading candidates in those races coming to our studios for either a debate or a forum. We were busy the last few weeks. And tonight, we got the latest on New York's 7th, 10th, 12th, and 13th congressional districts, and we expect to know those results after 9 p.m. this evening. Now, a big factor in these races was, of course, the mayor, Mayor Zohran Mamdani's endorsement. The New York City mayor tossing his support behind mostly the new faces on the political scene, going against current Congress members and established candidates. The more establishment Democrats getting Governor Kathy Hochul's support. So there was a double-edged sword here, right? We have team coverage tonight across the area with all the reporters that are getting you the latest information from the headquarters across the area in a race where the divide couldn't be any clearer, though. That is in New York 10. So let's begin tonight with Pix 11 senior political reporter Henry Rossoff, who is live there in Park Slope, Brooklyn, with the very latest. Hey, Henry.
Hi there. Good evening, Dan. A word on the turnout, if I will, first, because you just went through the numbers. We're certainly seeing that late surge you mentioned. Really, it's only a trickle of people. I've been here most of the day here in Park Slope in the heart of New York's 10th congressional district, and we're now seeing sort of a steady stream of pickup. You mentioned there was 420,000 votes cast either today or early. Add to that another 35,000 that the Board of Elections have already said in the mail. I think we're on pace for something in the neighborhood of 530,000 votes. That'd be roughly half of the closely watched mayoral election last year, but of course this just 4 big districts that we're really watching and just on the Democratic side, so throttle your expectations accordingly. As for New York 10, so what we have here is Congressman Dan Goldman trying to seek a 3rd term against Brad Lander, the former comptroller, backed by Mayor Mamdani, one of 3 candidates that's being backed out of the 4 races. The dividing issues in this race, as you saw firsthand, Dan, on our debate stage there in the Pix 11 studio, was positioning on Israel. Congressman Goldman has refused to call what Israel is doing in Gaza a genocide, whereas Mr. Lander has done that. They've also been sparring over sort of what Goldman has called dirty campaigning in the closing days of this, accusing Lander of editing his words to misrepresent his meaning, some fight over who's funding and paying for what in this campaign, and as well as who's been better on immigration. So those are the issues really animating this race, which covers all of Lower Manhattan and parts of Brooklyn like Park Slope, where I am now, all the way down into Sunset Park. And we are seeing some heightened interest in the closing hours of this race. Our polling, as you well know, shows that Lander really sort of running away with this one by more than a 20-point margin, with very few, relatively speaking, undecided voters. But the only poll that matters, as they like to say, is on Election Day. And Dan, we will see how this plays out. Live in Park Slope, Henry Rossoff, Pix 11 News.
Yeah, I want to dig into that polling, Henry, the most recent polling that we did along with Emerson College, right? And kind of talk about why Lander saw such a surge here. Now, I know when Goldman ran just a couple years ago, you know, the votes were, he didn't win by a huge majority here. But what do you attribute the surge for Lander right now in that poll to?
Really, it has to be the fact that Lander had a bigger name recognition even than the sitting congressman after a relatively successful run for mayor last year, where he came in 3rd. He formed that well-known alliance with Mayor Mamdani. Mayor Mamdani incredibly popular in this district, and came out immediately supporting Lander as sort of repaying the favor of that alliance last year. And so he had a lot of momentum. And you add to that the fact that the progressive left, and this is a deep blue district, I mean, one of the most liberal in the entire country, although not as liberal as New York 7, had always been coming after Goldman. They always saw him as a bit more of a moderate. Lander became sort of the standard bearer for finally going after him in a really precise way. And you're seeing it play out, all those factors coming in, making this an extremely tough race for Congressman Goldman to win re-election.
And then you add in, of course, the Zohran Mamdani effect, who came out and supported Lander from the beginning of this race. And during our debate, Henry, you saw that kind of play out on the stage with Congressman Goldman saying, well, no, I supported Zohran Mamdani when he was running for re-election, kind of trying to get that in there to say, well, I want the Mamdani effect, too. But when you look at the numbers that are kind of coming in this late surge, who do you think that benefits?
Well, what we were hearing is that the early voting numbers, again, there was around 172,000 early voters around the city, not just in this district, were coming in a little bit older than the coalition that we saw last year that propelled Mayor Zohran Mamdani to victory. And so, this surge of voting today, I think what Mr. Lander and for that matter, Claire Valdez and Daria-Liza Avila Chevalier is hoping for is these are the younger voters finally coming out, finally plugging into this race. But it's very hard to tell, Dan, what this late surge means, other than the fact that, the closer you get to that Mamdani number last year, the better it is for the three candidates that he's supporting.
Yeah, Henry, I appreciate you, and it's interesting to see such an empty polling location behind you on a race that is so big. I know you are moving for our 9 o'clock hour over to the Lander headquarters, so we will see you in just a bit for our coverage in the 9 o'clock hour. Henry, thank you. We're going to head to another race now where Mayor Mamdani is heavily inserting himself again, and that is New York's 13th congressional district. Longtime Congress member and leader of the Hispanic caucus, Adriano Espaillat, facing a challenger in a new face on the scene, and that's Democratic Socialist Daria-Liza Avila Chevalier. But the backing of Mayor Mamdani has really made this a real tight race. Our James Ford has been paying close attention to this one. He is joining us from Hamilton Heights with a look at what could be a very close call tonight if we, in fact, get a winner out of tonight's numbers. James, good evening.
Right. That's a very good point, Dan. And you talk about closeness, right? Really, every poll that I've seen pretty much in the last 4 to 6 weeks has Espaillat, the incumbent, in the lead, but by single digits. And consider this is a district, and in full disclosure, I live in this district. It is a district that has had 3 members of Congress in the last 7 decades. Yeah, the legendary Adam Clayton Powell held this district for more than a quarter century, and then Charlie Rangel, a man who needs no introduction, was in Congress here for more than 40 years. And for the last 10, it has been Adriano Espaillat. He is hoping to keep that seat and extend that stay maybe as long as his predecessors. But the fact that he's had an opponent who's been polling rather well, all things considered, shows just how serious this race is. Here's more. The challenger to 5-term incumbent Adriano Espaillat went to vote on Tuesday with her greatest political asset by her side. Mayor Zohran Mamdani has endorsed activist Daria-Liza Avila Chevalier and made clear yet again that endorsement while all of the cameras were on them.
A year ago, New Yorkers shocked the world. They took a chance on me. And today I'm here with Daria-Liza Avila Chevalier asking them to take a chance on her.
As a black woman, as a Dominican woman, as the daughter of immigrants, it is my honor to have run a campaign that centers working people, and it is my privilege to be able to vote today, my privilege to do that with my community, to fight for my community, something that I will continue to do day in and day out.
Both she and the mayor are Democratic socialists who are prominently opposing the Democratic Party establishment, of which Espaillat is definitely a member. He points out he came to the U.S. and this community as a 9-year-old and was considered illegal in the country before gaining citizenship and then holding public office for 3 decades. After his vote on Tuesday morning, he had his own interpretation of his experience.
I am a new face in Congress. I'm the first formerly undocumented member of this community. I am the first Dominican American to be elected to the House of Representatives. I think I bring a different perspective to the table that's never been heard before.
And we're back here live outside Hamilton Grange Middle School, which is a polling place here in the district, and also out here, well, you see behind me here, you have representatives from both sides handing out literature, trying to get people to vote for their candidate. What we have seen, really light turnout overall. In fact, one voter told us that really there was no wait whatsoever to get to vote because the numbers are that low. And as has been pointed out earlier in the newscast, that here on Picks on Politics, that early voting had tended to skew a little older. Some analysts saying that might favor the incumbent. We'll just have to see as we continue to watch the numbers come in once polls close at 9 o'clock. Reporting live from Hamilton Heights, I'm James Ford, Pix 11 News. Dan?
Yeah, and James, I know you watched the forum when we had both candidates right here at this very table here for our Picks and Politics special forum in this race, where it got fiery and feisty between the two of them, and it really has been an ugly race. But like you said, you know this district really well living there. What would you say is a big issue heading into as they head to the polls, a big issue for voters?
There's a few, but it's certainly, actually, as it turns out, even though this district has a low Jewish population, support of Israel has been a big one. What we do know is the incumbent, Espaillat, has had some acceptance of PAC money from supporters of Israel, and Daria-Lisa Chevalier has said specifically that he should be ashamed for that. One other big one is he was slow to come to the aid of various protesters here, particularly favoring the Palestinian cause. And she says that's a reason to not vote for him. Will that resonate with voters here? Again, we'll see once those returns come in.
Yeah, absolutely. You're talking about the Mahmoud Khalil incident over there, and that was something that he was very slow to respond to, according to his opponent. James, appreciate you being out there. You will be with us for our special coverage at 9 and 10 o'clock tonight, so we'll check in with you later once polls close. Everybody, we'll be right back with much more Picks on Politics on this special primary night. Stay with us. And welcome back to a special edition of Picks on Politics. It is primary night in New York City, so let's talk about the most crowded race in the city, and that is the one over in New York's 12th district. That district spans East and West Manhattan from Midtown to Harlem and Roosevelt Island. Big district here, and there are leading candidates who are all looking to replace Congressman Jerry Nadler after his 3 decades of service. So we do have team coverage on this race because there are a lot of candidates to talk about, starting with Jay Dow on the Upper West Side. So Jay, good evening to you. This is where Team Lasher will gather soon, and he is looking to really pull this off right now, and he thinks he has the momentum. But let's start with an overall look at this race and where it stands.
Well, Dan, as you said, this eventually evolved into a 4-person race, and recently polls have shown that it's narrowed down to a 2-person race between Lasher and Alex Boris. And there have been a lot of hot-button issues that have driven the conversation. We're talking about AI regulation, tens of millions of dollars that have poured into this contest, this primary race on that very specific issue. Affordability, always going to be a big talker. And as you said, this is a big district. Once it was combined, we had Congresswoman Maloney and Congressman Nadler's district merged. So we're talking about a huge swath of Manhattan from the Upper East and Upper West Side to the north, all the way down to the south to the Village. A lot of people living in that area with a lot of opinions. New York District 12 is the wealthiest district in New York City and one of the most affluent in the country. So it is certainly noteworthy that all 4 leading Democratic candidates in this House congressional primary race, New York Assemblyman Alex Boris, Attorney George Conway, Assemblyman Michael Lasher, and Jack Schlossberg, grandson of President John F. Kennedy, are all supportive of increasing taxes on top earners and doubled down on the controversial position during the recent New York District 12 debate right here on Pix 11.
Income inequality in this country is not only a moral issue, it is an economic security issue. I have a long record of fighting for taxing the rich in the Assembly, and I will do the same in Congress.
We need comprehensive tax reform.
We need to also restore
the state and local tax deduction.
Mayor Zoran Mondani, who has specifically endorsed other candidates in other races, has so far declined to put his support behind any of the 4 leading District 12 candidates. All of them say they are well aware of the critical role the affordability crisis could play, even in this wealthy district, which runs from the Upper West and Upper East side to the north, all the way to the south in the Village. Still, recent polls are narrowing this down to a 2-candidate race between the 2 assembly members, Alex Boris and Michael Lasher.
The conventional wisdom is the older and the more West Side heavy the electorate, the better position that Michael Lasher is in. And that's what we're seeing so far in the early vote.
And in the latest polls, Lasher is showing a slight lead over Boris. And again, you've mentioned this, Dan, but it's worth repeating. Polls closing at 9 p.m. tonight. Dan?
Yeah, and Jay, you kind of highlighted just the amount of money that is in this area and the amount of money that went into this campaign from AI, right? That was a big issue in this race in particular, was the AI kind of contender in all of this. That was somebody who was going after Alex Boris. So you're at the Lasher headquarters. That's where you're going to be staked out tonight. Any movement there or any word from the Lasher campaign about how they are feeling heading into this evening?
Not just yet. We are at the location where you're going to have Lasher's campaign headquarters for the evening. His team is just starting to set up the risers inside this restaurant that we're standing outside of here on the Upper West Side. They obviously think they have the momentum. They obviously are planning on a victory based on the latest polls. Dan.
All right, Jay, we'll see you. It's going to be a long night. We'll see you in the 9 o'clock hour. Appreciate you. And to the other leading candidate in this race, in this district, now we're going to head over to Kips Bay, where Jim Vassell joins us, where Alex Boris' team will gather tonight. So, Jim, good to see you. What has been Boris' strategy, I guess, when you kind of look at this crowded race of field and how to stand out? From what I was told from people in that district is that he kind of played a ground game that was stronger than everybody else, almost at every subway stop every day along the campaign.
Yeah, Dan, good evening to you from Kips Bay. We're outside the Freehand Hotel where, as you said, the assembly member will be taking in the results of this election tonight. Many eyes are going to be on the assembly member, Alex Boris, who's, as we have been saying during the show, is among one of the front runners of this very hotly contested race. So a little bit about the candidate, Dan. He's a fifth-generation New Yorker. Again, someone who, as you said, has been put forth really a grassroots effort. Said he was born and raised here in Manhattan, here in the 12th district, where he still lives. The core message of his campaign really is that he's going to be a fighter for families and the worker. And of course, as we have seen in his campaign ads, he mentioned how he used to walk the picket line with his dad when he was a kid, fighting for factory workers. Now, a little bit about some of the big issues, as you alluded to, Dan. Assemblymember Boris has been big on artificial intelligence, a circle which he has had lots of influence. He has touted his legislation called the RAISE Act, requiring large AI developers to create and publish information about their safety protocols. Certainly, and of course, that was signed into law by Governor Kathy Hochul back in December. And some other general issues, fighting corruption, fighting President Donald Trump, and he's also campaigned in general about how he is not part of the political machine, Dan.
This is all going to be a very interesting race to watch when polls close at 9 p.m. Jim, thank you very much. We'll be right back, everybody, with a look at New York 7. Stay with us. And welcome back to a busy special Picks and Politics, everybody. It is primary night in New York City, and the last race we are following is that in New York's 7th congressional district, which covers parts of Queens and Brooklyn, from Hunters Point to Greenpoint and out east to Glendale. So what we do know is a new face will represent that very district as Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez retires from Congress after holding a seat on Capitol Hill since 1993. The candidates all come with very similar political beliefs. So let's get out to our Eileen LaPalmer. She is joining us live from East Williamsburg in Brooklyn with much more on this one to see what is happening in a very busy New York 7th congressional race. Hey, Eileen.
Well, hey, Dan, yeah, very busy. I'm inside of this former warehouse turned event space here in East Williamsburg, and this for tonight will be the campaign headquarters for Claire Valdez, one of the 4 people on the ballot in that race for Congressional District 7 to replace Nydia Velázquez. She does have the backing of Mayor Mamdani, but the very other close candidate in this, according to the polling, is Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso, who actually was endorsed by Nydia Velázquez herself. So at this point, this could be anyone's race. I am speaking now with the communications director for Claire Valdez, Andrew Epstein. Thank you for joining us live. We were talking earlier, and you said this could be a nail-biter?
Absolutely. Could go either way. I mean, the next few hours will really determine, as we have more than 4,000 volunteers spread out across New York 7, knocking on every single door, making every single phone call. This could come down to the wire, and if people haven't voted yet, they need to get to the polls right now. They just have a couple hours left.
And early voting initially was very low turnout. When you're looking at this, how does that factor into how you're feeling about things right now?
Absolutely, absolutely. We were talking about this a little earlier. It used to be the case that these kind of progressive or democratic socialist campaigns 8-9 years ago would benefit from low turnout primaries. That's just not the case anymore, especially after Mayor Mamdani's record-breaking victory last year. The coalition that he built of first-time voters, people who had left the political system, has really expanded the universe of people we're talking to. So the first few days were nail-biting. They were very low early votes, especially among younger voters. But after we got through the Knicks championship and the parade and the ceremony, I think people were able to exhale, think about politics again, and over the past few days, we've seen every day increase, not just turnout, but turnout among younger voters who were so key to the mayor's coalition and who were so key here in New York 7, which is, I think, the youngest congressional district in the city.
Okay, then just quickly, do you expect Mayor Mamdani to possibly be here later tonight to support his candidate?
I do. I hope so. I mean, you know, Claire and the mayor go back years. Assemblymember Valdez was the only elected official when we launched Mayor Mamdani's campaign in October 2024. I know because I was his communications director at the time. She was the only person there. And so they have a deep bond that's both personal, but more so about their shared politics and vision for what politics
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Sorry. All right. Thank you. We are in for a long night here, potentially. We are live in East Williamsburg. Eileen LaPalmer, Pix 11 News. Dan?
Yes, it's going to be a long night indeed when those polls close at 9 o'clock. Eileen, thank you very much. So joining me now to talk more about this primary night is friend of Pix on Politics, J.C. Polanco, professor of the University of Mount St. Vincent. So good to see you, J.C.
So happy to be here.
We're looking at the numbers right now, 420,000, relatively low voter turnout, but a big surge from over the weekend. You and I were just discussing these numbers. Talk about kind of what that means going into a night like tonight and what it means for New York City.
Well, look, I've always been upset about the turnout. Even at the end of the night, you know, let's say that we get a massive surge and we get to 14% turnout. That's a lot of people that stayed home and didn't participate, and it's bothersome. So it's something for us to talk about. I know there's some Charter Commission discussions on opening primaries. I would have a good time talking about it, but it shows you that there's a massive surge in Manhattan. We're getting a lot of massive surge in Brooklyn as well. So, you know, at the end of the weekend, after early voting, you had about 179,000, 400,000+ tonight. That's pretty good.
Let me ask you about the Mamdani effect in all of this and what it means for him. Is this a litmus test really for him and his political power, if he has that, if the candidates win tonight?
Look, Mayor Mamdani is the king of New York City right now. Tonight is going to be a defining moment. Is this going to be the night where he shows his political muscles? He came after some incumbents out there. He's saying there's a new sheriff in town and I'm in charge. If he wins, if he goes 3 for 3, I mean, it's going to be a bloodbath across the city when it comes to showing who's in charge of the Democratic Party. But there are going to be some losses for the mayor for getting involved and spending so much capital on trying to take out these incumbents, and we're going to all be looking at the 13th and the 7th and you know, the 10th. I know we're expecting to see Lander pull off this victory,
particularly the 13th, where he did say he was going to endorse Espaillat and didn't. We're going to leave it there, JC. We have a lot more tonight for our special edition of Pix on Politics in the 9 o'clock hour, and then I'll see you right back here for the Pix 11 News at 10 alongside Shirley Chan. Busy night. We'll see you in a bit.